millions stolen from Usain Bolt's investment account. A case of white-collar crime in Jamaica. I am Renaldo, McKenzie, and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal podcast. In this episode, which is part of a lecture that I'm giving at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, looking at Caribbean thought. In this particular episode of the Neoliberal podcast, we delve into some of the challenges and the problems of the Caribbean, and we lift up a very interesting story which provides an amazing opportunity for us as students and the Caribbean and the world to dissect and to explore the problem and the challenge of the Caribbean in relation to its colonial past in this post-colonial neo-globalized world. And of course, we talk about prosperity that has dogged the Caribbean. And in my previous book, in my book Neoliberalism, Globalization, and Inequality, we talked about where do we place blame, of course, and we will explore that later on. But in this particular podcast episode, which is going to be available in video and audio, we are going to explore this very important issue. And this story is available in the Neoliberal Journal, in the Neoliberal Corporation, at www.theneoliberal.com. I wrote an article dated January 24, which is early today. And the article, I said that I understand from the students in my Caribbean thought class, the Jamaica Theological Seminary, that $12 million were stolen from an investment account belonging to Olympian Usain Bolt. Now, Usain Bolt is the Jamaican sprinting sensation. Is the Jamaican sprinting sensation, who is a two-time world record holder at 100 and 200 meter distances. And of course, you can visit Usain Bolt at www.usainbolt.com. And I actually have a copy of the story talking about this $12 million that was stolen from Usain Bolt account, which I will share with you just for background. And this particular story was written after I had asked the students in my class to bring a story to the class to comment on. And that's when they told us, they revealed to me this issue of the white-collar crimes. Of course, I think I saw the Minister of Finance early this morning or late yesterday. I read the Jamaica in a story that was written by the Jamaica Gleaner, saying that they are inviting the FBI and other law enforcement from the US and other post-industrial countries to help them investigate this SSL crimes. But so this particular podcast episode is very important because it put into perspective some of the issues that we will delve into Caribbean thought, and what I will raise in neoliberal globalization, looking at how neoliberal globalization is affecting not just people of the global south, but people of the global north. So the story in yahoo.com, if you go to yahoo.com, there's a story written by Natasha Dye dated January 20, 2023 in People's Magazine, entitled Usain Bolt's Lawyers Threaten Lawsuit, claiming $12.7 million is missing from his investment account. Olympian Usain Bolt, the story begins. Olympian Usain Bolt is missing more than $12.7 million from his account at a private investment firm, his attorney said. Lipton P. Morgan, who represents Bolt, sent a letter to Stock and Securities Limited demanding the missing funds be returned to Bolt's account. Gordon provided the Associated Press with a copy of that letter. According to the letter, Bolt's account with the firm, which once held $12.8 million, now contains just $12,000. Bolt's lawyer said, if this is correct, and we are hoping it is not, then a serious act of fraud, larceny, or a combination of both have been committed against our client. Stocks and Securities Limited will have 10 days from Monday, when the letter was sent, to return the money before Bolt's legal team will pursue civil and criminal action per the AP. Stocks and Securities Limited and representatives for Bolt did not immediately respond to people's request for comment. And that is the story in People's Magazine, written by Natasha Dye, in an article entitled "Usain Bolt's Lawyers Threatened Lawsuit Claiming 12.7 million is Missing from His Investment Account." Now, the article that I wrote in the Neoliberal Journal was not influenced by that article written by Natasha Dye. It was influenced again by a question that was raised from a student in my class about white-collar crimes. And of course, this particular situation regarding Bolt provided an interesting opportunity to raise as a case, speaking to the wider issue of corruption and the wider issue of violence and the wider issue of corruption and violence and the problem of these Caribbean islands. So a student raised the question, asked if the white-collar crime occurring in Jamaica is a result of colonization, since we are studying Caribbean history, past, present, and exploring opportunities for the future. Therefore, as a class, we reflected on this challenge in Jamaica and many Caribbean countries in light of the broader issue, colonization, and the challenge of the Caribbean since decolonization and the presence of neoliberal globalization, promoting neo-capitalistic attitudes of greed, nepotism, and corruption. So, I responded to the question that the student had asked me, and I entitled it "Reflections and Response to a Reflections is important. Reflections and response to a question from a student in Caribbean thought on current behavior and colonial past." So I begin by writing, is the white-collar crimes occurring in Jamaica, where the rich are having their monies in banks stolen, a result of colonization? Many wealthy Jamaicans have seen hundreds of thousands of dollars leave their bank accounts. Usain Bolt lost, at the time I had said 10 million, but then that was before the story broke. Usain Bolt lost 12.8 million or 12.7 million. Law enforcement on the island is investigating, but no one has been held responsible. This may seem to stem from a culture of corruption, and just so you know, if you go to the same article, the same website, www.neoliberal.com, in this article there are links to an article speaking to the issue of corruption in Jamaica, and I will talk about that towards the end, because we talk about the cost of corruption. The cost of corruption, Professor Trevor Monroe who was the executive director of the National Integrity Agency, did a video entitled "Cost of Corruption." I think it was in 2012 or thereabout. And prior to that, corruption was a sore issue in Jamaica, and I believe and I will talk about this on Friday in my Caribbean Thought class, and the students will get a chance to watch the video. And it's on YouTube for free. One of the respondents or commentators in the video asked, Jamaicans have received so much money. Jamaica has received a lot of money in investment, billions of dollars, but where is the money? And I allude to that in my new book, Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered. Where is the money? Where is the money? All this money that Jamaicans have received which is juxtaposed in another film, Life and Death by Jamaica Kincaid, with Michael Manley saying that, well, our hands were tied and we had to use the money to do whatever they whatever they wanted us to use the money to do, and we had to liberalize our economies and so on. I talk about that neoliberalism book one. We had to liberalize our economies, and as a result, Jamaica is what it is today. But and I said to you, that does not speak to why, but that does not answer the question: where is the money? Yes, you had to liberalize the economy. You have to open up Jamaica, but where is the money? Where are all the investments that you get from overseas? Where are the billions of dollars in loans and so on? Where is the money? And of course, in the book Neoliberalism, book one, Neoliberalism, Globalization, I talk about where the money went. Okay, we talk about and we talk about the arrangements between local elites and the neoliberal regime. Okay, and they went to and they traveled. They went on a spending spree in Miami and Paris, so on and so forth. But so when you talk. So we talk about a student raising the issue in Caribbean thought class and asked, does the behavior stem from colonization? Colonization meaning, and before I asked the question, I was talking about the issue of corruption. I apologize. That is the white collar crimes occurring in Jamaica, where the rich are having their monies in banks stolen as a result of colonization. And I say to you, I wish law enforcement on the island is investigating, but no one has been held responsible. And this may stem from corruption. And there is a corruption index that studied corruption in Jamaica. And I say to you, before the Jamaican government established into law the National Integrity Agency, the corruption index was high, but by the 2018-2019 corruption index was lowered significantly. Or 2017, but we know that there's an article. I wrote an article that speaks to corruption, that speaks to crooked politician being on the UK radar, and that was in about 2019 or 2020, 2021 or thereabout. An article was done that so corruption is on the rise again in Jamaica, and since COVID, and I'm going to allude to this further in the article. But there is the article I'm reading that I've written in the Neoliberal Journal that you can access has several links within the article that you will benefit from, that you will not benefit from that by just watching this video or listening to the podcast. Okay, so. Let's continue. So, yet a student raised the issue in Caribbean thought class and asked, does this behavior in Jamaica, the white collar crimes or the SSL crime, whatever it may be called, does it stem from colonization? Which is an appropriate question. Colonization, meaning, and this is my definition of colonization, meaning the periods in the world, in world history, where Europe and the created privileged white race engineered and successfully completed a systematic takeover, domination and control of parts of the world and peoples. We're talking about Africa and America. And notice I said created white race, because I said to you, there is no such thing as a white race that was created in about the 1600s to support or to prepare for the most heinous project to enslave a whole set of people from Africa. And I have written about that in Privilege Power Position in an article. And you're going to see, and that's in the epilogue of my new book that's about to come out. So that's what colonization is. Again, the period in world history where Europe and the created privileged white race engineered a successfully completed, successfully. What's colonization? The period it's a process, but it's also which represents a period in world history, a process which represents a period in world history where Europe and the created privileged white race engineered successfully completed a systematic takeover, domination, and control of the parts of the world and peoples in Africa and Americas. This involved what Fanon, who wrote Black Skin, White Masks, and Wretched of the Earth, had called the depersonalization of the colonized, the system which is systematically controlled man and woman. so as to project all things within a European or Anglo-Saxon white supremacist milieu. The question is therefore that the student is asking is therefore a provocative one and provides for a deeper reflection within academia or academic thought that considers human nature, practices, and the ultimate. The issue of theft and white-collar killings. There is white-collar crimes and blue-collar crimes. Blue-collar crimes once carried heavier penalties and weight. But these white-collar crimes are experienced by white-collar crimes that are being experienced by the wealthy who have worked for what they have, worked important for what they have. Yet can they afford to lose any more of their earnings and share it with the rest? Now we talk about taxing the rich. Would you share your wealth, or would you allow it to be stolen? That's a very important question. Would you share your wealth, or would you allow it to be stolen? Yet can they afford to lose it and share it with the rest, loosening their advantage and grip? However, the accumulation of wealth does not necessarily come from hard work. I just talked about hard work. The accumulation of wealth does not necessarily come from hard work and labor within the capitalist society, as we are made to believe. When we read Wealth of Nations, and when we look at certain people's lives who leave out the certain parts. But when you read Wealth of Nations written by Adam Smith, but according to many, it was the influence of Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Wealth of Nations written by Adam Smith being the Scottish man. But of course they are saying that. So I am saying here that the accumulation of wealth does not necessarily come from hard work and labor within the capitalist society, as we are made to believe when we read Wealth of Nations. Right here I'm being very critical. It's critical thinking at work right here. When we read Wealth of Nations, it's about thinking about what has been thinking what has been previously thought. Remember, we define critical thinking as that. Jean-Baptiste Colbert of France was said to have influenced Adam Smith, which had informed Jean-Baptiste of France was said to have influenced Adam Smith, which informed or probably explained the idea of capitalism, or the theory that explained the idea of capitalism in Western civilization. It was said to Adam Smith. Wealth of Nations was said to be Adam Smith's magnum opus. Yet it was influenced by somebody else. Anyways, reading on, we talk about what was that politician, George Stone? Was it Roger Stone, George, whatever it's called? Anyways, later, Max Weber continued Adam Smith's inquiry and observation when he wrote The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, asserting that religious principles such as Calvinist, but more so Arian theory, and I'd rather say the Arian theory of salvation, theology of salvation, linked the notion of work to rewards. However, Karl Marx, in Das Kapital, challenges this inquiry, which has come to be the socio-economic doctrine of Western civilization and the Caribbean states, this doctrine of capitalism, born in the theory of the Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, Jean-Baptiste, and Max Weber, and that this theory, which the Caribbean states are also ascribed to, whom we had described again, Caribbean, as dependent, but with some amount of modernity and high income inequality. Marx re-examines this socio-economic history, this history, revisits it critically, This history that is devoid of the violence that was actually within it, that has largely propped up the societies, that has propped up the wealthy and dominant classes. They leave out the violent part of it, the theft. So Marx revisits all of this and says one of violence and one of theft. Trotsky picks up this Marxist theme to explore the tension and struggle in societies between classes contending for dominance. But is this short-sighted? Or is it just for dominance, for equality and independence, to access what has been stolen or has escaped them through theft and laws that protect theft by a people who we now call elites? In fact, if you were to look at some Caribbean states today, it represents this tension, violence and theft. I ask you, where are the Taino people who once lived there, who once lived, toiled, and controlled regions of the Caribbean? In Jamaica, the natives were wiped out by Christopher Columbus and the Europeans, which we celebrate as discoverers and innovators. But if we are to be accurate, they must only be hailed as thieves, murderers, who stole land and then enshrined laws that protect their ill-gotten wealth. Today, indigenous peoples like those American Indians and the natives of Brazil lack much agency from robbers who possess their lands, who are creeping more and more into their protected and agreed upon spaces. The world today provides a picture of violence, including theft and murder. Slaves in Africa were not immune from this either. The Europeans, after they extracted peoples from Africa through an elaborate strategy of trickery, they went back and dominated Africa, plundering peoples and cities, stealing resources and culture as their own, and even set up nations within the foreign land as their own. We talk about South Africa. Yes, it was stolen land. Now, one of the best, now flourishing over all the other African nations. And when we talk about trickery, you know what we're alluding to. We talk about elaborate strategy of trickery. The Europeans made deals with one group of tribe, African tribe. But guess what? That deal that they made, that special deal that they made with one African tribe, they made that same deal with all the other African tribes. All the other African tribes, creating chaos, which led to its takeover strategy. A strategy that has devoid the West today, the Europe, and they are playing tit for tat. That's why I can't wait to have John Castro on the show tomorrow. He will be here tomorrow at 2:30, and we'll broadcast it at 5. It's going to be video. We're going to be talking about what's going on. You see what's going on in the House, playing tit for tat. I think they're trying to do what the Democrats did to Donald Trump. They're trying to do with President Biden, or what playing tit for tat. When Russia and China, they are using strategy and stealth to gain advantage. But back in the days, Europe and the West, they had strategy, which now divorced them. But let's continue with this story. But we talk about this trickery, which helped to facilitate this theft, this chaos, which caused the downfall and the doom of Africa. That's what I was alluding to with this trickery when I talk about trickery earlier. But let us continue. Today, the Middle East is in tension, fighting to hold on to their lands, which the Jews, through a history of war, claim to have lost to the Crusades and Roman expansion in the world, which they now are trying to reclaim from the Palestinians, who now control much of that region. However, the Palestinians are refusing to recognize the Jewish claims to part of their lands, and the tension between the two continues to threaten peace and stability in that region. Moreover, talking about China and Russia, China is threatening war with Taiwan because of what the Chinese believe about their land, that Taiwan has stolen from the communist state. This has also created a sticky situation which also threatens hostility between the two countries. The point here is that the world is in tension, stemming from a history of theft and violence which many have attempted to protect through systems that promote civility laws and religion, and theories that rewrites their theft and violence as beautiful stories of hard work. Further, this is promoted as the ideal, a kind of American dream to be where the rich have attained through hard work. Yet reality is corrupted by a narrative that ensures maintenance of position and wealth, and to coax hard work out of labor, willing masses thinking that they too will achieve some position, attain to some position, some dream that they will never attain to because it was created and attained to by theft. If you were to read Karl Marx and read, I talk about people. I think there was a story I heard that where Donald Trump paid $75 in tax returns some time ago, but he made billions of dollars. I remember the IRS was after me for $16,000, and I made far less than $1 billion. Talking about, we're moving right along. So you understand what I'm talking about here. Jamaicans have been accused of having higher corruption measures, but this has been ticking lower. But since COVID and the economic uncertainties, corruption is on the rise. And I alluded to this earlier when I talked about Professor Trevor Monroe, who became the executive director of the National Integrity Agency. Whatever happened to the National Integrity Agency? Where is the integrity now? Where is the integrity? Where are they? I haven't heard much about the National Integrity Agency, because what have become of that? We will do some investigation. But crime and violence is rising, especially in cities and communities of the formerly colonized. Especially in cities and communities of the formerly colonized. And in retrospect, we wrote an article looking at crime and violence in cities, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Chicago, UK, black and brown neighborhoods, so on and so forth. I think there's an article and we talk about relative deprivations, but we're going to speak more touch on that a little bit as we move on. But with the access of social and digital media, more people have access to information and the sophistication of theft. It is not just the top that can steal, whether through loopholes or nepotism, as I referenced Donald Trump earlier, loopholes in the tax system. But this access and improvement in tech leads to financial break-ins everywhere. Traditionally, like the Ponzi schemes, the lottery scams, and Jamaicans know about lottery scams, the Madoffs, post-industrial countries know about Madoffs, and colonization. Europeans and many people know about colonization. All of that, those are all constant themes in society that are symptomatic of human perversion. I can be rich, but no one else can. I have the right idea, but no one else can have an idea. Russia, for example, is justifying its invasion or attempts to steal parts of Ukraine as a world-saving mission. This is the human perversion adopting a posture of privilege that attracts the lower, which now attracts the lower classes, or has always attracted the lower classes as part of this tension, who compete among themselves, even through theft and disregard for the other, to arrive at a place he will never get to or was designed for him or her. Essentially, it was the treat that the master used. This place, this dream, this where you work to. It was the treat that the master used to condition a response from the willing pet. Yet the wayward pet, who circumvents his master and steals the treat, is derided and beaten for acting outside of the system. Acting outside of the system. Robin Hood was said to be the ultimate thief whose theft was justified, for he stole from the rich who were depicted as evil to give back to the poor. The rich refused, yet the rich refused to be taxed more. Black peoples have long been separated from any compensation, stemming from the threat of their colonization or colonizers, stemming from the theft of their colonizers. Let me read this again. The rich refuse to be taxed more. That's an important statement. Black peoples, in reference, black peoples have long been separated from any compensation stemming from the theft of their former colonizers, now still living off their wealth of their ancestors who stole and plundered. Social welfare in some countries enables poverty and pretends to quell the populace who are divorced from the theft of systems. Indeed, the greedy will not share their ill-gotten gains and live in opulence. Again, the greedy will not share their ill-gotten gains that allows them to live in opulence, while the people live in dirt. Nevertheless, when there is high levels of income inequality and poverty, then there's high crime and violence, including theft. This is relative deprivation. And we talk about relative deprivation being the correlation between high levels of income inequality and poverty, and high crime and violence. And Marxist materialist theory says that societies that have high levels of income inequality and poverty suffers from high levels of crime and violence. And that is a fact, especially what's going on even today in the cities that we referenced earlier, in the US, in the UK, all over the world, especially where there's a high concentration of black and brown people. And that includes theft, the violence of theft in all shape and form, whether through colonization, and today neo-capitalism, influenced by neo-capitalism and the bureaucratic phenomenon, as was influenced through this Pharisicalism, do as I say but not as I do, which is a Judeo technique of the Pharisaical sect within a Romanized empire, which has come down to us, this relative deprivation. And Jamaica as a whole has high income inequality, and is one of the islands with the highest levels of crime and violence. And recently, the Gini coefficient, which measures income inequality in societies, has been risen significantly. So it stands to reason that this rise in white-collar crimes and crimes in certain communities justify from this Marxist materialist conclusion and analysis, just justifies this analysis from Marxist materialism of relative deprivation. And the communities affected by crime today include a dynamic of black and brown peoples whose wealth has decreased or remained stagnant over the last couple of years, since 2018, thanks to some policies, some conservative policies, to the rise in Reaganomics, this trickle-down ideology, which never seemed to work. Yet the rich refuse to be taxed. Remember, that's an important statement. So when then is the solution? So what then is the solution to theft and the controls that come with it? Is it not charity? And I wrote an article about asking the question, what will upend violence? And if you go to the neoliberal journals and also go towards the Caribbean Thought Academic Journal in the Neoliberal Corporation, or the Neoliberal Corporation magazine feed, www.theneoliberal.com, you'll find that article, What Will End Violence? And that article and this particular article I'm reading is actually done in academic lecture style, which is part of the lecture, the 3-hour lecture I will give on Friday at 6 at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, and which is situated, and it is part of this whole this whole drive of conceptualizing Caribbean thought, post-colonial thinking, conceptualizing Caribbean thought within this neoliberal globalized world, or neo-capitalistic world, or within this world of challenge and opportunity, and this post-industrial world. Can we take advantage of the opportunities? Can we utilize utilize stealth and strategy? But of course we know that not the one Robin Hood stole from the rich to feed. But the rich are wealthy nobles. But this issue of white collar crime, where now where people like Usain Bolt is finding money disappearing. That's that kind of theft. It's quite interesting. And it's some higher level. And we talk about politicians and corrupt people at that level. But we also know that there are international systems, China, and there are also people who are actually going onto systems and stealing money. So we know that there are, and I think I did a take of this recording earlier, which didn't work, and we had to do several takes of this, and I had mentioned to my co-producer that I think we had to deal with spyware and malware, especially during COVID and last year, and there was a lot of money given out by Equifax. Equifax had to settle because of a federal ruling. Settle because of some widespread spyware or some privacy issues and so on. And so we don't know if this theft is a result of privacy issues. We're not sure and what's happening with this investment, or it's probably maybe they invested the money in crypto. We know what's going on with crypto, But that's what's happening. But this is part of the wider issue of fraud and corruption. So the question, but outside of that, I asked the question: what then is the solution to theft? Because this is still stealing. Whether it is through tectonic means, which we say that stealing is becoming sophisticated now, or whatever the means, what then is the solution to theft and the controls that come with it? I say to you, charity, and what? And I say, people are, and you might laugh. It sounds simplistic. After saying all of that, you come and say charity. That's your eureka moment, charity. Yes, charity, because that's a bad word now, That's why people laugh when people say charity. And I talk about love in the article. And people talk about love. This charity, what am I talking? But please remember now what I asked you earlier. What did I ask you earlier? The rich refuse to be taxed. And what else did I ask you? I asked you another question earlier in the article, which is very important, and I cannot find it. Here we go. This is the question. White-collar crimes are experienced by the wealthy who have worked for what they have. Yet, can they afford to lose any more of their earnings and share it with the rest. This is about charity. We talk about taxing the rich. Then I asked, would you share your wealth, or here is the warning. It's a warning and it's a question, but it's actually a rhetorical question, to be honest with you. You think it's a question, but it's very important. Part of the assumptions of this thesis, of this hypothesis here. Listen to this. Would you share your wealth, or would you allow it to be stolen? Which is what is happening. Say, for example, the lottery scam. What do you think? What do you think social welfare is? Social welfare is a mechanism, it's a strategy to protect the established from their wealth being stolen, lest those who at the bottom will rise up and develop, and through various means take money that the rich have or has. So what do you think that? So I asked. It's very important to this. That's a very important question. I write in prose, and it's quite ironic that I write in prose, which is quite Socratic, I guess, because when you think about this writing in prose, what does it suggest? A subscription to the privilege, academic and intellectual privilege, so that only those who understand academic prose or writing in such a way can understand, but yet I am all about facilitating the communication, which is to make popular what was the monopoly. Yet I write in dynamic form, which informs my writing and my speaking. Yet I write in these ways because society is corrupt, because not all of society. I mean, we talk about corruption. There's corruption everywhere, and there is corruption in society. Of course, we're going to define that, and we will define what corruption is. And there's an article in Corruption and the Cost of Corruption speak to this self-interest. Corruption, in part of corruption, is self-interest. So charity, there is no room for charity when there is self-interest. So, yes, you might say, why am I writing in prose? But as I said, because of how society, we study society when we study Caribbean thought, and the issue of society, we study that, and gains and dynamics in society, and why is there a particular dynamic? A dynamic based in privilege and certain narratives and a history, again, that's corrupted by those who seem to want to protect what they have gotten as if what they have, or maybe they want to do or probably they can do what the Republicans are trying to do in Florida. Ban the truth so that they cannot feel guilty and also act responsibly in society, and using their political will to provide compensation to those who continue to suffer economically as a result of colonization, which continues within this neo-capitalistic world, so that people are now retreating to now tectonic means, which has helped to decentralize information and the control of information. But it is quite sad that people who work hard for their money, like Usain Bolt, have to experience this condition. But it is part of a condition that sells a position. But I say to you, again, what is the solution? Charity. And charity without conditionality will heal the tensions of constant theft and violence. It is an unpopular word that is transplanted by philanthropy and tax purposes. One can't be generous without the benefit of it being written off on your tax returns, or one receiving some reward in return. Yet it is this unconditional generosity and charity that will stem the tide of theft and tension between and among peoples. The world will never stop the violence of theft. It is everywhere and seems a human condition of reaction based on a conditioned idea of pie in the sky an American dream or a position to attain to. But what is the ultimate of all things? Is it not that we become one with reality in all of our individuality? And I want to go back to what I had just said about charity. I was talking to somebody earlier about what will end violence. And I said to him, I ended by saying love, and he said, oh, that's utopian. And that prompted me to write some of what I wrote in the article. Because I talk about the fact that we are conditioned, our minds, our psyche, we have been so damaged by colonization and by the control of others that we can't even think. Our fallen nature prevents us from ever thinking about an idea that is an idea that we can actually attain to, because we think in terms of our human nature, a human nature of fallenness that has been adopted, that has been accepted in our minds, so that we will never attain to something or think we can attain to something where we love unconditionally, because we are already conditioned to think in other ways. And unless we disrupt the thinking, then the hope and a dream of that utopia will never arrive. And it probably will involve a change and a transformation of society. A society that will disrupt the dynamic that many people have come to enjoy, that they will not give up. So that what pertains today is the accepted human nature that continue to do violence and to condition violence, driven by a pie in the sky. But what is the ultimate of all things? Is it not that we become one with reality in all of our individuality? A recognition and an appreciation of the self, which translate itself in a recognition and an appreciation of other selves that extend from yourself, which speaks to the idea of the golden rule: do unto others as much as you do unto yourself, so far as your mind is not damaged in a way that prevents you from thinking and treating the self in the way that we ought to see ourselves. Not as narcissists, but as critical thinkers. Like Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. What is the ultimate of all things? That we become one with reality in all of our individuals. More, this same amount of violence that it takes to control people requires the same amount of force to push back against that violence. Such is the law of thermodynamics and physics. Yet violence is the opium of the few and the privileged that continues its position. Violence from below is dismantled, taken to mean criminal, for that is what it is: an attack against the status quo. When is violence acceptable? When violence is used to stop oppression and discrimination, or the invasion and penetration of the superpower. But the world has become sophisticated. Violence that disrupts, leading to uprooting culture, edifices, and nature is defeatist. For what good is that for the people who must live off that at the end? Something must remain. Then we are left with MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., and his diplomatic endeavors, peaceful endeavors that were ceremonial and only led to gifted freedoms and his demands, or Marcus Garvey, the Jamaican hero. his Back to Africa endeavors, which delved into nepotism, or the usual countervalence of the dominant force. MLK was assassinated, and Marcus Garvey was jailed, deported, leading to his demise. The Archeans had looked to Achilles, the warrior god, as the consummate hero through violence would vilify the Achaeans over the Trojans for their thievery. The Jews would look to the coming of a God in Jesus, who will plunder all and restore the glory of Judah. Then picked up by the Greeks in their Judeo-Christianity of a Jesus Christ as the ultimate Savior, but departed from the image of war and violence to one of sacrifice of love. Yet the church had their crusades, a violent religious war against another religious group for dominance and prominence. Today, violence has intensified all over the globe, so that even the US, which represented a new free world with democracy and laws, had its US Capitol attacked by the same citizens who were opposing the decision of its brethren. Through violence led by their leaders, elites using strategy and the usual jargon that enticed the base, led a coup which was an American experiment by extremists. Therefore, we are everywhere influenced by violence. So again, how effective is violence a tool for change? Violence on top of violence create more violence. But there are various, but not every kind of violence create more violence. That is parochial and backward thinking. Violence of love, a violence of charity, a violence of charity and strategy and stealth, but a violence of pressure at times will work when those who are subjugated through discriminatory and terroristic means. I mean, Paul, Nanny of the Maroons, Paul Bogle, Sam Sharp, people like Frantz Fanon, Fidel Castro. I mean, a lot of these people, slaves, people who are subjugated, who have to fight for their freedoms. When you think about push for freedom, those are freedoms. You can either fly. You talk about that when you are cornered. There's a flight or a fright. There's a flight and a fright response. There's a flight or a fight reaction. If you are conditioned and trained to be complicit and willing and obedient, when you are cornered, then you will be colonized and subjugated and controlled. But when cornered, when cornered and you have that mentality, that human individual, that human mentality, that human instinct to fight, you will fight. Everybody fight. Every animal fights when cornered. Even the weak ones fight. Or the ones that don't have, and by weak I mean they don't have all the resources that the other people have, but they still fight. So yes, so there are times when you have to fight for your freedom when you are cornered, but when you're willing, when you're trained to be willing, you won't fight. You will gladly accept any wishbone that they give you, and you will settle for anything. The pets settle for anything. But but we're talking about, but now, when you have ceremonial activities in 21st century, ceremonial activity, say for example what's happening in Ukraine, they have to fight, and as our brothers, we have to give them the means to fight. It's quite a perversion that Vladimir Putin is justifying his actions. It's quite a perversion when poor people steal from other poor people. Yes? It's quite a perversion that Usain Bolt, the Olympian, is having to experience this theft, this larceny, this fraud, this icon who's worked hard to put Jamaica on the map. But is this the condition of violence and theft and control and domination, and this need is driven by this pie in the sky and this selfishness and not wanting to be loving and kind and benevolent and to share, that will continue to upend the balance, unless the balance and the dysfunction in society is what makes for society, so that when we, at the end of life, there is this peace from the tension in life. That's critical thinking at work. Just so you know, from a sociological perspective, white-collar crimes can be understood as a product of the societal and cultural norms that shape the behavior of individuals and organizations. Jamaica, like many developing countries, has a culture of corruption that is deeply ingrained in its society. This culture of corruption can be seen in the widespread acceptance of bribes, embezzlement, and other forms of white-collar crime as a normal part of doing business in Jamaica. This definition was taken from Janelle McCowan in her letter to the Gleaner that was actually published as Letter of Today in the Jamaica Gleaner on January 18, 2023, entitled The Impact of White-Collar Crime on Jamaica. Again, there is a paper in academia.edu, and if you go to neoliberal.com right now and check out this article, you'll see all the links. Excuse me. I apologize. You'll see all the links that will provide some kind of additional reading and extra reading that will put all of this into perspective. Now, the class on Friday that I teach, that I facilitate as a lecturer at the seminary, I teach the class I'll be teaching on Friday will speak to some of this. But as I said, that lecture will be a full lecture. This is only an excerpt, although we've been speaking for 57 minutes. Now, coming up tomorrow on the podcast, and it's going to be a video and an audio podcast, John Anthony Castro will join us talking about tax. What's going on with? It's the tax season. Many Americans are filing their tax. Has started to file their taxes, but you're going to get less on your tax returns. I wonder how many people will file taxes this year. We'll see. And of course, he'll give us an update as to his suit or his filing against Donald Trump. John Anthony Castro is a contributor to this show, and we thank God for John Castro, who is running for president in 2024. A grassroots man, a deep gentleman, a man of opportunity, who has great ideas to run this country, who doesn't think in tit-for-tat terms, who transcends, who is from a party, but his thinking transcends party to that of country. He thinks in interdisciplinary ways. That's what we're talking about. A young man who is very strategic, who comes from humble beginnings, and who is now a multi-millionaire running a multi-million-dollar companies. I'm happy to have met this gentleman, and I'm looking forward to speaking with him tomorrow as he provides commentary about what's going on with his party and this tit for tat with going after Biden, just as how Democrats had gone after Donald Trump. And I say to you, when Russia and China is thinking about bigger things, we are fighting over small stuff, hurting our heads over the small stuff. We're coming up on the hour. This is the Neoliberal. Support us at anchor.fm/the Neoliberal/support. What good?